Tubies? We got a little deck profile today. I'm also using a new camera that it's going to be the camera that I'm going to be using to live stream a lot of the tournaments and at the locals. So generally I'm just kind of, this is more about giving a test for the camera to see its kind of capabilities. Let me know what you think. You think the quality is poor or something like that, just give me a shout, let me know. I normally shoot most of my videos with a DSLR, and this is a regular kind of camcorder. It's by Panasonic. So we'll see how it does. It's been pretty good so far. In shooting at the locals, low light, it's not too terribly great in, but you know, I can't really kind of compete with the DSLR in terms of quality. But for live streaming, the DSLR just does not work out well for those long shoots. So I'm gonna go and get into the deck profile and talk about prophecies, spellbooks. This is actually the competitive deck that I ran last format, and then I'll be running this format. I normally don't get into like my competitive decks. I'm more like into talking about the fun decks and talking about combos and stuff like that. But I just thought I'd kind of throw this out there. I'm trying a couple new things with it. I want to see what everybody thinks. World of Prophecy, High Priestess of Prophecy, two boss monsters of the deck. With Judgment gone, we now kind of have less, more gameplay, but a more diverse kind of way of kind of going after our win conditions. So we can't rely on always kind of repopulating the hand with Judgment, and then going into Jowgen and then kind of keep control of the field. I do still feel though where Prophecy works best is where you are kind of still playing it like a control build. So this build that I have here, you know, I'll just kind of like lay out the monsters and talk about the deck a little bit as well. So it's not, the way that I run it, I'm not flooding the field. I'm really not even kind of going into my extra deck all that much. It's more just kind of trying to keep control of the field, repopulate my hands, and then start picking away for game once, you know, I kind of have that field and hand advantage. So I run one World of Prophecy. World of Prophecy is great because there's lots of ways for me to utilize this effect. A lot of times I won't even use the nuke the field effect. Yeah, I won't even use them like a JD. It'll just be I have, you know, like two spellbook cards in my graveyard that I need to kind of get back into my hand. I'll play him, get the two spells back into my hand, and I won't even nuke the field. I usually try to bring out World as soon as possible because it's not just the monster effects that can trigger his effect. I can also spellbook of life him, and so for that very reason, more often than not, even when I can't use his effect or I can't nuke the field or I don't need to, I'll still go ahead and bring him out just to make sure that I have him in the graveyard. So one World of Prophecy, two gets a little bit too cloggy, although there are some builds I messed around with where playing, you know, lots of ways to kind of flood the field with World, where I have tried out two just in case I draw into one, so I can still kind of keep one on my deck. I really though, whenever you draw into World, you know, it's that kind of oh shit factor, and so, you know, there are certain kind of cards. In this build, I am kind of teching one Lightning Vortex for that very reason, to get him out of my hand. Wing Blast is another option. There's lots of other sort of stuff. You can even use like a Mind Crush, and then blind Mind Crush with only a World in your hand to get him into the graveyard in case you don't hit. And if you do hit with Mind Crush, you keep the World in your hand and get rid of one card or more in their hand. So one World. I only run two High Priestess. I don't think you really need three. You could run three. There's no right or wrong answer to that. I, just for consistency's sake, prefer two, because really I'm not wanting to draw into it all that much unless, you know, I have those three spellbook in hands. A lot of times it's I'm bringing out Temperance and doing it High Priestess that way, or I'm liking her back to the field. So two is good. Three is okay. Two is kind of what my preference is. Two Temperance. I was running 3 Temperance, and I'll tell you why I kind of shied away from that. I hate drawing into multiple Temperances. It kind of dies in the hand. There's no real use for Temperance besides being a target for life or getting at Worlds or Priestess. But what I did was I took out 1 Temperance and I went with Stoic. Stoic is nice because I'm not running any Veilers in this build, and if they blow up my where is it at? My tower, it still gives me a target to be able to bring out if there's only 1 Spellbook in the grave. So that's one good reason to run Stoic. Stoic searches out Temperance, so it almost assures me of having a Temperance in hand. And the other nice thing too is Stoic, in addition to the Magicians, are also targets for Spiritual Water Art. And Spiritual Water Art will trigger Stoic's effect. So we got Stoic out with a set Spiritual Art. I can flip Spiritual Art, look at their hand, get rid of something, and then I get to search out a Temperance from Stoic's effect. So my personal preference, and this is still I'm still kind of in a testing phase with this, trying to find out as the meta kind of develops this. I'll make some changes around. The Lightning Vortex might go away. I'm just kind of using that for right now as my board clear, since I don't run a Dark Hole. But so I went from 3 Temperance to 2 Temperance and 1 Stoic, just to give myself another target for Spiritual Water Art, and still be able to get some consistency with getting Temperance to be able to bring out some of my boss monsters to the field. And of course, I run 3 of Spellbook, Magician of Prophecy cards. Cards way too good. And that's pretty much it for my monster lineup. We will go into spells. First, the 3 ofs, Spellbook, Secrets. And that's really the only 3 of. I went down to 2 Spellbook, Library of Crescents. I do like this card at 3, and the rationale at 3 is consistency to the hand. I want to be able to play Crescent. I want to be able to play it early. It's also more live in a build like this where I'm running 2 Priestess and where I'm also running 2 Tower. So there's a lot of instances where Crescent won't die in my hand. I would like to kind of put that up to 3, but just to fit everything I want to into the deck, I'm kind of I took it back down to 2. Next 2 of, I do run 2 Master. I do kind of miss having 3 Master, but it's just not needed. I'm not with Judgment gone. I'm really not needing to use Master as much, and it is, besides Spellbook of Eternity, it's the second target that I tend to send back to the deck after using Spellbook of Tower. So I run Spellbook of Tower 2 just for consistency, because I do want to make sure I keep Tower on the field. There are a couple decks out there that run field spells that will kind of nuke it. It helps me to take care of Necro Valley and other kind of cards like that. But so I run Tower at 2 for just consistency and to give me an out to be able to, if they get rid of my 1 tower, to be able to still feed stuff back to my deck. I do run 1 Eternity. There's been some talk with some people online at my locals about running 2 Eternity. I can copy it with Master, true enough, but what the argument really is the way that this deck runs now, which is, well, I mean, it always was pretty fate-focused, but it's so fate-focused now because we're kind of trying to use fate and recycle fate and re-loop fate, that a lot of the feelings is that we should probably move Eternity up to 2, just so we can kind of go a little bit more aggro with our graveyard. I personally, I probably would put Crescent at 3 before I put Eternity at 2. More often than not, I have dead Eternities in my hand than am I having to remove Eternities with Fate. So my rationale is if where's the problem? If I'm ending up with dead cards in my hand more than I'm having to remove Eternity from my graveyard from the effect of Fate, then I'll just kind of keep it how it is. I hate drawing into multiple Eternities when I have no cards removed from grave, and it just kind of sits there in my hand. So I do run 2 Fate. 3 would be too much. 2 is just right. This card is, I mean, in my opinion, probably the best card. I mean, of course, Secrets and all these other kind of cards are, but in terms of diverseness, I'm almost always searching out Fate to be able to kind of set either to flip Magician back down to remove their card from play. So yeah, so 2 Fate. I also run 2 Wisdom. Really important card, especially in this build where we're really kind of trying to keep field presence and trying to protect stuff. A lot of times, what I'll end up doing is you know, I'll end up bringing out a Magician with a Sept Fate and stuff in the graveyard in an AOA spiritual water, I will just say. And this card is not as important, but in terms of not the primary, you know, kind of starting off kind of plays, but in terms of bringing out World, I don't know how many times I've worlded, and someone goes and tries to stop World, and I have Wisdom in place to be able to kind of nuke the field, or they flip that. I see a lot of Fiendish Chains right now, so that one turn to be able to kind of protect World to then nuke the field and get rid of that Fiendish Chain is great. So I run it at 2. Don't need to be any more than that. And then let's see here, let's kind of clear some space. One life. That more than anything is to grab World from the graveyard. So I try to get World into the graveyard as soon as possible, either by summoning or dumping them by some means, and then life them back whenever I need to, whenever I have my hand prepped to be able to utilize this effect. The thing about World 2, and I should have probably went at this earlier, you have to have 2 spellbooks in your graveyard to be able to activate the effect. You can't just grab one, and then you have to have the 4 in your hand to be able to kind of nuke the field. So by having him in the graveyard and being able to use life, I can make sure that my hand is prepped, and then when I do end up bringing him out, I can go ahead and nuke the field if need be. So 1 life, and then 2 spellbook of power. Card needs to be at 2. I've seen people that have run it at 1, and then they've done, you know, the master copy in the same way we were talking about Eternity before. I think it's just too important in running a deck where, besides, you know, these 3 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards are 1,000 attack or less. Really, the bulk of my monsters, 2/3 of my monsters, are 1,000 attack or less. Most of them are 500 and 300. It's really, really important to be able to power, especially if not just powering once, but it's really, really important that we power and then master power to be able to beef stuff up, because that still only gets Magician to 25. It gets Stoic to 23. It does get Temperance up to 3,000. But yeah, Temperance is really kind of the only one that you really want, you know, that consistently I'm doing a single power, and I feel comfortable about attacking a face down. More often than not, I have a Magician out, and if there's a face down card that, you know, not, you know, that I'm reading correctly, I'm going to want to power and then master to attack into it. So, but yeah, so I run two power, and then that is pretty much it for the spell card. For the spellbook portion of the spells. Another 3 of. I do run 3 Pot of Duality. Consistency in terms of getting at Magician early on is extremely, extremely important. So I do run 3 Pot of Duality. The only downfall to Pot of Duality, at least in my mind, because it's not necessarily the special summoning, the thing that hurts me the most is I'll draw into both these cards at the same time, and then I really have to make a judgment call. It's kind of based upon what I've drawn. More often than not, if I've drawn into a Magician, and if I've also drawn into like a Secrets, it's almost like a given that I'll end up, you know, using Crescent. Because then I can kind of press and I can search, and I still have some backup plays with the Magician and the Secrets in case I don't get into what I need to get into with Crescent. If I don't really draw into enough so I feel confident that I'll be able to get the cards I need to off of Crescent, then I'll end up playing the Pot of Duality, because then it's and then I'll have to end up pulling on the Crescent, because well, I don't know if you know or not, because I didn't say, but when you play Crescent, you can't play any other spells that aren't spellbook cards. So you can't play both these in the same turn. So I'll end up kind of pod duality, hoping to get into a Secrets or Master. The thing for me, what's really, really important about the Crescent plays, because generally if I know I can get Crescent off, then that gives me my grave prep, as well as my search to be able to get into my fate, or be able to get into my tower. So, Crescent, in the absence of Judgment not being around anymore, assures me of being able to have those 3 spell books in the graveyard to be able to make fate, have the proper cost to banish for fate. And I'm not saying that I can't, like power a magician or or just blindly, wisdom a magician. But I really, in this build, don't want to use cards uselessly. It was okay with Judgment because that's just one more card that I can repopulate to my hand. So, you were kind of wasting these. But, on a turn 1, the last thing I really want to have to do is power a magician that I can't attack with, just get 3 spell books in the graveyard. So, pod duality at 3. Consistency to be able to get that Secrets Magician to hand to start prepping my graveyard field and hand. The last 3 spells that I do are all one-ofs. Moon also, all these will conflict with Crescent. Moon, a lot of times, it has a defensive and offensive kind of use. I can moon the opponent. But I can also moon when my turn comes back around my own magician if I don't have what I need to in hand, and then reflip him to be able to do the search effect for magician. So really good card. I lied. I actually think I changed this around. I just didn't change my deck. This Dark Hole I think I've taken out for a 3rd Fiendish Chain. I just kind of felt like, I go back and forth. Dark Hole is great in any kind of deck that runs, constant protection. I have Wisdom out, so I can Dark Hole the field and Wisdom my guy and keep it safe. But I felt like Hole versus Fiendish Chain, it was more important for me to be able to have the dynamicness of Fiendish Chain than Dark Hole. I do have a Lightning Vortex, and I would almost 100% of the time always run a Dark Hole over Lightning Vortex. But because I'm not running like a Phoenix Wind Blast, it's my sole way of getting World out of my hand into the graveyard and wiping the field. So I run the Lightning Vortex. You guys can choose. Test both. I'm still testing both. I'm still kind of undecided going with a 3rd Fiendish Chain or a Dark Hole. But that is it for the spell card lineup. Traps. I do run the Spiritual Water Art. The very cool thing about Water Art is if I have my graveyard properly prepped, and I have my Fate, and I have my Magician out with my Water Art, then I can actually, they summon a card, I can chain Fate, okay? I can banish my 3 spells, and then I can chain my Water Art, targeting my Magician. Fate will still go off because when it was activated, I did have my Spellcaster type monster on the field. So then Magician goes away, I banish theirs, and then I get to look at their hand and send something to the graveyard. A lot of people were kind of thinking that this is a dead card. I think I have like 9 or 10 ways to search out a water to be able to get onto my field. And more often than not, I'm only really kind of caring about Magician if I don't have a backup play in hand, so that I can get my Fate off. It's so important. I mean, basically the card says, if you can just imagine it, a Yu-Gi-Oh card that says, look at somebody's hand, get rid of their one most important card, then I mean, it just works out so nice. When people kind of tell me that I shouldn't run the card, usually it's because it's either dead or and there are certain matchups where Water Art is not, you know, the greatest, and I will side it out. That's why there's a side deck. But in a situation where the Spellbook decks have changed to where we are now running so many traps that we never ran before, keeping that Magician on the field usually is just to be able to have material for Fate to come out. So what I generally will do is when I flip AoE, I normally have some other sort of back row set up. It could be a Fate, it could be one of these other ones. You know, if I have, you know, a Warning or a Bottomless Trap or a Phoenix Chain or Compulse, I now can look at their hand and I can make a really good judgment call on, okay, these are the monsters that are going to cause me problems within the next turn. These are the monsters that are not. These are the spells, these are the traps that can really kind of trip me up. I know my back row. They don't know my back row. I know what I can protect myself against. They don't. So by having that really educated look at their hand with AoE, to me is extremely important. I run 2 of them just for consistency's sake of getting that to my hand, as well as getting the Magician. You don't want to run 3; it's kind of too much. 1 could be okay if you just want to pop 1 in there to tech me, and that's fine. So 2 Water Arts. And then you'll see a lot of staples that were never in the Spellbook lineup for the most part before. Warning, Compulse, Bottomless, Torrential, all extremely important cards. I don't need to kind of go into the value how they function in the Yu-Gi-Oh game. 2 Finish Chains. Again, I think that I've kind of gone back and forth with having 3 versus that Dark Hole. Card is so good, even if they can blow it up, it still gives them something additional to have to kind of deal with. And again, people are so accustomed to dealing with spellbooks in a certain fashion that they think they kind of know what the back rows are when you set them. And by kind of running cards like this, it really can kind of trip up their plays. I mean, I never ran was 8 traps, 9 if you put in that 3rd Phoenix Chain, and half of running a good control deck is one, giving yourself options to be able to kind of handle anything, but secondly is to create enough kind of wariness in your opponent's head of uncertainty that they might misplay or do something wrong. So by being able to have all these kind of in the deck, kind of backed up by that Water Art, really does a good job of me being able to kind of keep control of my opponent. And I gotta say, the one thing about this build and how spellbooks have to be kind of played now, you have to be thinking about the next couple turns. It's not a very explosive deck by any means. You know, so in terms of looking at control in stages, one, controlling your opponent before they get an opportunity to do something, controlling your opponent when they get a chance to do something, and then controlling your opponent after they've just done something are all extremely important things. And I think that the success with the Spellbook deck coming up in this next meta should really be focused on control before they get a chance to do something, which is, you know, with Water Art, and when they get a chance to do something in terms of these traps and stuff right here. A lot of times, like cards that have kind of gone out of my build very early in the testing, like the Threatening Roars, the Mirror Forces, even the Tragodias, because you do end up with a pretty big hand. You can end up with a pretty big hand, you know, with World and playing this deck right. All the cards that are in response to after your opponent has really done something have really kind of made their way out. So as much as I love the Threatening Roars just because they're chainable and you know, kind of gives me a little bit of extra turn, the preventative sort of stuff, and then the stuff that kind of keeps that kind of oppression on the field is what kind of really kind of won out with in terms of me making my choices for this deck. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully when I post this, the quality will be of such that that I'm kind of happy, and I'll be able to kind of use this camera more, which is a little bit easier to use sometimes in terms of setup than the DSLR. So comment below, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.